so much. That's that each of you have made, and the fact that you're still interested in a country that is for, of, and by the people and not for, of, and by the government. And this is a major time in our country's history. This is still the land of dreams. You know, in recent months, I have been to several different countries, and I'm always interested to get back here to America because people have come here for decades, for centuries, to realize their dreams. My dream was to become a doctor as a youngster growing up in Detroit and Boston. It seemed like a lofty goal, but something that I felt was obtainable. And when I finally did achieve that dream as an intern and a junior resident at Johns Hopkins, one of the things that really struck me as I went onto those wards, and I would see all these people, the CEO of this company, the president of this organization, the crown prince of this country, the queen of this nation, frequently dying of some horrible disease. And every single one of them would have gladly given every penny and every title for a clean bill of health. And you begin to realize how critically important your health is. It is the most valuable thing that falls into insignificance compared to your health. And that's the reason that your health should be controlled by you and not by the government. But when we're talking about things that are important, life is important. And that includes the life of the unborn also. You know, there are those of us in this society who've told women that there's a war on them because that cute little baby inside of them, they may want to get rid of it. And there are people who are keeping you from doing that. And women say, no, they're not doing that to me. No. And they get all riled up and think that somebody's depriving them. Let me tell you something. There's no war on women. You think about it. When a woman is pregnant, what happens? People get up and give her their seat. They get out of the way. They say, you go first. You know, there is great respect and love for pregnant women. There is no war on them. The war is on their babies. That's where the war is. Babies that over the past few decades, we have destroyed 55 million of them. And we have the nerve to call other societies of the past heathen. Think about that. And what we need to do is re-educate the women to understand that they are the defenders of these babies, not the destroyers of these babies. We need to understand. Well, you know, there were a lot of bumps in the road for me realizing my dream of becoming a physician, not the least of which was the fact that my parents got divorced. And that was devastating for an 8-year-old boy. And let me just say to anyone who's out there who's got children and they're thinking about getting a divorce, please reconsider. Start thinking about those things that you loved about your mate. Don't concentrate on the negative stuff. You know, of course, you take two people from different environments and you put them together, there's going to be some friction. It's like rubbing two pieces of sandpaper together. But you know what? If you keep rubbing them, it gets smooth. You got to stay in there, you know? It's, you know, to have and to hold till death do us part, not like the Hollywood model, to having to hold until you get irritated with each other. You know, that just doesn't work. And we need to recognize that God created the family structure for a reason. And marriage is a sacred institution by God himself. And there is no reason that man needs to change the definition of marriage. Now, it is true that we need to be respectful of everyone's rights. And I personally believe that any two adults have the right to bind themselves legally in such a way that they have visitation rights, property rights, various other rights, but that does not require the change of the definition of marriage. Well, you know, there were other bumps in the road. Poverty. Now, I got to tell you, I hated poverty. I was sure that I was born into the wrong family. There was some mistake here. That is, until my mother, who only had a third-grade education, who got married at age 13, discovered some years later that her husband was a bigamist, worked 2-3 jobs at a time, leaving at 5 in the morning, getting back at midnight because she didn't want to be on welfare. You know, this woman made us read books. I didn't want to read them. Everybody else was outside having a good time. But she said, you got to read these books, and you got to submit to me written book reports, which she couldn't read, but we didn't know that. But, you know, but people say to me all the time, why did you do it? Your mother was out working. You didn't have to read those books. Yes, we did. Because, see, you had to do it. You know? Well, interestingly enough, when I started reading books, something began to happen. I started reading about people of great accomplishment. And I began to notice something. Some of them were born into terrible circumstances, but they had a dream and they were willing to work toward it. And I saw that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you in life is you. It's not somebody else. It's not the environment. And once I realized that, poverty didn't bother me anymore because I knew I could change that. I said, this is only temporary. And you see, this is what's missing in America today. That can-do attitude that allows people to move up. You know, we have, my pet peeve are those individuals who fancy themselves great champions of the people who are downtrodden in our society. And they pat them on the head. And they say, there, you poor little thing. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure you have the housing and the food and the health care and all of those things. You don't need to worry about a thing because it's those bad people over there. I'm going to get everything from them and I'm going to give it to you. And all you have to do is vote for me. Not a problem. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who fall for that without looking at the big picture. Because in the big picture, you soon come to realize that you're going to run out of money. This gravy train is not going to last forever. And that a much kinder thing to do is to find ways to empower those people and ways that they can move from the lower rungs to the higher rungs of our society. You know, I want the same advantages for everyone in our society that I was fortunate enough to have. But if we continually keep people in a dependent position, then they're soon going to lose the drive that is necessary to achieve in our society. And this is, in fact, still a wonderful country. It is the pinnacle country on earth. And there have been other pinnacle countries before us. They've risen, they've fallen. They became enamored of sports, entertainment, lifestyles of the rich and famous. They lost their moral compass, and they tolerated political corruption. And what happened to them? And it is so important that we learn from what happened to them, because us remaining the pinnacle nation is not only in our interest, it is in the interest of the world. Because if you look through history, pinnacle nations have never before been as benign as we are. And if we go off the scene, we will be replaced by someone who is very unlikely to be as benign as we are. And the world has forgotten what it's like to live under tyranny. And if you live under tyranny that has nuclear weapons and all kind of weapons of mass destruction, it's going to be even worse than it has been in the past. So we need not only to remain at the pinnacle, but we need to reestablish power structure in this nation. At the pinnacle of power is the people, not the government. This is what we have to change. Unfortunately, what has happened is that people have been beaten into submission. You know, my wife and I travel across the country in a different state every day. Red states, blue states, north, south, east, west, huge enthusiastic crowds. People coming out and saying, you mean there's somebody else who thinks the way I do? You mean I'm not weird because I believe these things? Because I have these values and principles? Because I think logically and use common sense? Because the secular progressives want you to think that. You know, Saul Alinsky has 13 rules, and rules for radicals. The first rule, make the majority believe that their opinion is the minority opinion and that your opinion is the majority opinion. If you can co-opt the media in the process, you're far ahead of the game. That's exactly what's been done, and people are now sort of like looking around. Can I say that? Can I do this? This is total crap. That's what it is, okay? And it's really time for the people, we the people of America, to stop being afraid of the government and to put it in its place. Now, this is not to say that I don't like government or that I despise government. Government plays a very important role when, in fact, they believe in the Constitution. That's the problem. When they begin to neglect the Constitution, when they begin to impose their own will, when they look at laws of the land and they say, okay, I think I'll enforce this one I won't. When they begin to treat people differently, they say, these are my friends, you don't have to do that, but all the rest of you have to do something. When they say the people and the executive branch and the legislative branch don't have to participate in certain programs, but everybody else has to. When they give businesses exemptions, but the common people, they say, no, you have to do it. You know, that's not America. That's Russia. That's someplace else. How do we allow that to happen in this nation? And I have to tell you, you know, Obamacare is really what has happened in this nation since slavery. And it is, in a way, it is slavery, in a way, because it is making all of us subservient to the government. And it was never about health care, it was about control. And that's why That's why when this administration took office, it didn't matter that the country was going off the cliff economically. All forces were directed toward getting this legislation passed. And why did they want to pass it so badly? Well, as I said the other night on television, Vladimir Lenin, one of the fathers of socialism and communism, said that socialized medicine is the keystone to the establishment of a socialist state. So this is, some people say, oh, come on, you're being paranoid. How could anybody bring up something like that? I would say if you know anything about history, how could you not bring it up? And, that's the problem. And, when in 1831, when Alexis de Tocqueville came to America to study this nation, why did he come? Because the Europeans were fascinated. How could a nation barely 50 years old already be competing with them on virtually every level? That was impossible. Nothing like that had ever occurred before. And after he looked at the government, he said, let's look at their educational system. And he was blown away. Anybody finishing the second grade was completely literate, could read the newspaper, could have a political discussion, could tell them how the government worked. You only found that in the aristocracy in Europe. And when you stop and think about it, why do you think those early pioneers were able to push across a rugged and hostile terrain from sea to sea? Because they were well educated. They knew how to build structurally sound bridges. They knew how to build roads. They knew how to build dams. They knew how to build storage containment centers. They knew how to invent things when a problem came up because they were extremely well educated. This is something that we must get to again, and it is absolutely critical that we do it pronto. 30% of people in this country do not finish high school. Think about that. We're not producing the number of technological people that we need. And that's why a lot of the tech companies have to go to India and Pakistan and China and Japan to recruit people. We need to change that. In our high schools, our counselors need to be directing our students toward the right kinds of careers. And in our colleges and universities, we need to hire more scientists and mathematicians and direct people that way, and maybe fewer sociologists and radical people who send people off in the wrong direction. But when de Tocqueville finished that big 2-volume set, what impressed him the most was the fact that we taught in our public schools values and principles. And we were not ashamed to use the Bible as the source of those values and principles. And many other nations of the world, they're not afraid of their religious beliefs. They quite proudly proclaim them. But somehow we have come to believe that we are not a Judeo-Christian nation. We have some leaders who have even made such a proclamation. They don't know anything about the founding of this nation. And, in our last book, America the Beautiful, we wrote many of the stories about incredible things that happened during the founding of this nation that were supernatural. Throw God out of our nation, he will neglect us, and we will go down the tubes. We're already on the way, but I think it can be reversed because there are enough God-fearing people in this country, and we must not be ashamed of our relationship with God. And if we do, we're going to lose it. And the last thing that de Tocqueville said is, America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be good, she will cease to be great. And we need to understand when we sing our national anthem and we get to that last line of the first verse, and it says, the land of the free and the home of the brave, that we cannot be free unless we're brave. Thank you very much.
Carson. I never thought a surgeon used the word crap, but now we've heard it. Folks, if you'll just indulge me for a couple of moments, I have a number of announcements that are very important to get by. I'll have my head down reading most of the time. I won't be able to see if you leave early, but God will know. Are you ready? We have a number of stand t-shirts and bumper stickers and other items for sale at the registration desk. Here are our beautiful models. Hey, don't be a nerd, be a cool and righteous dude and get one, okay? Thank you, models, for showing us where you stand. Remember to pick them up. Thank you, may be dismissed. All right. Yeah, pick those up. There are lots of cool resources there at the registration desk. Be sure to go get some for you. Once again, authorized taping or recording is not allowed here at the Values Voters Summit. If you do that, we will shut the government down. Oh, wait a minute, we've done that. Never mind. All paid registrants may vote in the straw poll that's coming up. Voting hours are from noon to 7 p.m. Friday and 7 a.m. to noon on Saturday. You may vote. You can scan your QR code on the back of your name tag. There's also a scan code on the sign at the top of the stairs if you do not have a QR on your tag. Vote at one of the computer stations located at the registration. Half of you are probably wondering, what is a QR code? Next, FRC Action Pack is hosting a reception in the Congressional Room today. It'll be from 5:30 to 7, featuring Representative Mark Meadows, Jim Bridenstine, and Virginia Lieutenant Governor candidate E.W. Jackson. We'll also be speaking later. As well as a host of other candidates. The cost is $100 per person, and you can get your ticket upstairs at the registration booth where all the stand materials are. You must have a ticket to attend. All college and high school students, there's going to be a special mixer from 5:30 to 7 tonight in the Empire Room, which is here downstairs. Young people will have the chance to ask questions about one of the hottest topics today. Perhaps you've heard about it, same-sex marriage. Many of today's youth have friends who view same-sex marriage as acceptable, and Ryan Anderson of the Heritage Foundation and Peter Sprigg of the Family Research Council will take tough questions and also give thoughtful answers so that students can address the topic thoughtfully and intellectually from a biblical perspective. Plus, the dinner's on us. There'll be free pizza for everybody. All you need to do is show your student name tag for admission. The Association of Mature American Christians, which is the conservative alternative to AARP, is hosting a hospitality suite today from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the council room behind the West registration area, and everyone is invited. AMAC is an organization that advocates for the interests of Americans 50 and older. They speak out on the values we believe in, such as faith, family, and freedom, and aren't afraid to say we still believe in God and country. There will be a book signing from 5 to 5:30 this afternoon featuring Joel Rosenberg in the Diplomat Foyer, and Mike Huckabee will be doing a book signing this evening from 6:45 to 7:15 in that same room. We'll also be having several signings tomorrow. These are listed in your program book, but please remember to buy the books in advance and avoid long lines, and that's located on the Regency Hall landing just outside the